In a grand and majestic mansion, where every corner radiated elegance and wealth, a new day began with the promise of celebration. The marble walls seemed to whisper stories of generations that had walked before, while golden chandeliers sparkled like captured stars, casting their glow on everything below. Servants hurried through the endless hallways with trays of delicacies, ribbons of silk, and bouquets of fresh roses, each trying to perfect the atmosphere for the occasion. Every sound, the clink of crystal glasses, the quiet rustle of fabrics, the soft footsteps on polished floors, was a reminder that something extraordinary was about to happen. The entire estate shimmered in preparation for the upcoming wedding. White roses adorned every staircase, crystal chandeliers glistened with unmatched brilliance, and the air itself felt perfumed with anticipation. The groom, a young billionaire and heir to a dynasty built on honesty, sacrifice, and hard work, moved through the corridors with a calm dignity. He was the picture of refined elegance, his suit tailored to perfection, his expression poised yet thoughtful. Guests bowed their heads respectfully as he passed, whispering of his intelligence and character. He greeted relatives warmly, asked after their comfort, and double-checked that all preparations were being flawlessly executed. Though he stood at the pinnacle of wealth, he carried himself without arrogance, his heart anchored in values instilled in him long before fortune ever found his name. For him, this was meant to be the happiest day of his life, the day he would take a step into the future, with someone to share his world with. His bride, however, carried herself with an entirely different spirit. She was undeniably stunning, a vision of beauty in a gown of emerald silk that rippled with every step she took. The dress, tight at the waist and flowing like liquid down to the marble floor, seemed designed not merely to impress, but to command attention. She moved like a peacock, fanning its feathers, deliberate, proud, and certain of the eyes following her every motion. Yet behind the sparkle of her beauty was an arrogance that weighed heavily in her gaze. To her, the grand palace was not a home, but a stage. The servants not people, but props, and her soon-to-be husband not a partner, but another glittering jewel to add to her crown of self-importance. Her smile charmed, but her heart measured everything in status, power, and possession. Meanwhile, on the first floor, tucked into a corner near the sweeping marble staircase, an elderly cleaning woman bent over her work. Her uniform was plain, her apron smudged with traces of soap and dust, her hair gathered neatly into a simple bun. She wore thick yellow gloves that had shielded her hands from years of scrubbing, polishing, and mopping. To many, she was invisible, a background presence who moved quietly through rooms filled with grandeur. Yet, to those who looked closer, her eyes revealed a world of depth, eyes softened by time, lined with sacrifice, yet still glowing with patience and an unshakable warmth. She moved slowly but with determination, her body weary, yet her spirit unbroken. Though her work went unnoticed, she carried it out with dignity, arriving before dawn and leaving only after every last corner gleamed. In a world obsessed with appearances, she was a soul of quiet endurance, embodying a love that needed no recognition. As the bride descended toward the staircase, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor, she suddenly came to an abrupt stop. The surface ahead glistened. It was wet from being freshly cleaned. Her graceful stride faltered as irritation tightened her jaw. How dare her path be anything less than flawless? How dare a servant inconvenience her, even for a moment? Anger flared swiftly, burning away every trace of composure. Without hesitation, without even glancing to see if anyone was watching, she stormed forward and lashed out. Her hand struck the cleaning woman across the head with a sharp, humiliating blow. It was not the act of one woman toward another, but of someone treating another human as though she were nothing more than dirt beneath her shoes. The older woman gasped, stumbling as the mop slipped from her fingers and fell to the marble floor with a dull thud. Her cry was filled not only with surprise, but with the pain of countless years spent enduring the weight of silent burdens. Her dignity seemed to tremble in that single instant. The hall, which only moments earlier had been alive with bustling sounds, suddenly seemed hushed, as though the entire mansion itself had recoiled in shock. And then, at that very moment, the groom appeared. From the top of the staircase, he stood frozen, his hand gripping the polished banister as his eyes took in the scene before him. Time seemed to slow. He looked at the bride, standing tall and unrepentant, and then at the cleaning woman, bent in pain and humiliation. 1,000 memories flooded him at once. In the weary lines of that humble woman's face, he recognized something that shook him to his very core.
This was no ordinary servant. This was his mother. She was not adorned in jewelry, she wore no crown. Her hands were rough, her back stooped with years of sacrifice, but to him she was the reason he stood where he stood today. She had raised him alone, working day and night, sacrificing her own comfort, her own joy, and even her own health, so that he might have a chance at life. She had taught him the meaning of compassion, honor, and kindness, not through words, but through the silent, endless examples of her own life. She was the cornerstone of his world, though she had asked for nothing in return. Few in the mansion even knew who she really was, for at her request he had always kept her identity hidden, protecting her humility. Slowly, the young man descended the stairs. His footsteps echoed in the silence, each one deliberate, each one heavy with unspoken truth. He walked past the bride without a glance, bent down, and gently lifted the mop from the floor. With tenderness he helped his mother to her feet, his hand steadying her trembling body. When he finally raised his eyes to meet the bride's, his gaze was no longer soft, no longer filled with the promise of a future together. It was cold, silent, and unyielding. The bride's confident facade faltered, surprise flickered in her eyes, replaced swiftly by fear. She searched his face for words, for an explanation, for even a trace of the love he once held for her. But there was nothing there. Only a final, crushing disappointment that pierced deeper than any anger could have. And then he spoke. Only one word. Leave. The mansion seemed to shudder with the weight of that command. In an instant, everything was over. The vows, the promises, the celebration. The wedding was shattered, not by chance but by truth. For love without respect is nothing. Beauty without kindness is hollow, and wealth that disregards the sacrifices of those who built it is worthless. On that day, the young billionaire made his choice. He turned his back on glittering appearances and chose something far more precious. He chose his roots. He chose his family. He chose his mother. In the silence that followed, the true meaning of loyalty and love stood taller than any fortune could. And so within that palace of marble, gold, and crystal, the world witnessed a transformation. The bride in her dazzling green gown faded into memory, while the woman with the bucket and mop was revealed as the only true queen, the queen of sacrifice, resilience, and unconditional love. What an unforgettable story. Dear friends, if this tale touched your heart, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Many more inspiring stories await, and each one reminds us of a simple truth. Wealth is measured not in gold, but in the love that endures when all else fades.